Well, it has to be. What if someone doesn't know Spaceship? What if we don't know who's watching? It could be someone who's like. It could be someone who's like, I mean, we don't know who's watching that. It has to be. It has to be. I mean, they know. It has to be. This is part of the activity. It has to be. If someone's like watching Fox News right now, but not the people I'm making fun of, like someone who's, I don't know, like watching Fox News. The title of it is that right. That's morally depraved. Like it must be to comment on because they know people are watching and commenting on cameras. It's called Chili's Free Market Education. They have to know. They'll say someone will comment. They have to be, and that has. Yeah, I know my job. Um, they're doing a story on Fox News right now called Chili's Free Market Education. And the thing is, like, that it has to be. Why are they in blue, though? Why are they in blue, Spaceship? No, why would that be on TV if it wasn't for people who know to comment on? What? No, they are. I mean, I know they have to be. Maybe it's in blue because they're saying, no, we're doing it on purpose. That's a show where it's for people. It's for people who watch Fox News, but not necessarily like in a bad way. That this is the sort of show where they're sort of saying, like how the free market, like the sort of free market thing, and the private sector does things more efficiently, and when things are public, they don't work, and it's that thing. But the thing is, if someone were like in college or something, this is actually morally depraved to the point where it has to be meant to comment on. I think that's why they're wearing blue. They're saying, okay, we're doing it on. It was blue to say, don't think that we don't know. This is meant for people with the cameras to comment on, to educate people, right? And this is true in so many of the cases, but this is a particularly sick one, and it's so sick they have to be doing it out of love. That when they say Chile's free market it's supposed to be an example of like how like see the free they were educated. That this is what happened in Chile. They're doing it on purpose. Like if you're watching this, but you wouldn't know that. It's okay. Like it's not that they're doing it so someone can like bring you this. What happened in Chile is one of the sickest things that our government has ever done. It's actually the sickest thing, like, as far as I'm aware, like in this era. I'm sure people who lived through like the Vietnam era or whatever would say like slow down, Gaga. Like this is only for your generation. Like you have no idea what happened in the '60s and don't So this. I would assume that's the sickest thing that they did in my lifetime. What they did is this, that they wanted to test out actually what would happen, like all the mythology that they were spreading, like, and the things they were sort of like prepping for by harming people in Latin America and all this stuff. Is there were economists, like one of whom there's a wonderful type of protest they do. But you have to understand it's high concept. It's called the Biotic Baking Brigade. I think they're from San Francisco, and the girl who sort of is a figure in it, like she had activist parents who were for real. Like, there's a real act. They named their daughter Rahula, but it's a Jewish family. That's a really activist family. And what they figured out to do is like this Milton Friedman. The only way to protest what he was, what he got started, which is that he was running in the 80s like a kind of propaganda thing for the free market by telling people things that he is an economist, so like, and that he was like selling the idea of like how wonderful the free market is. Like they were trying to sell the American brand of capitalism to the public, So he was saying, do you see the marvels of the free market? He would hold up a pencil and he would say, do you understand? Like, you see this wood came from one country, and the lead came from another country, and the rubber for the eraser came from another country. But because of the magic of the market, they are able to coordinate all this so that you have a pencil. And they were like a series of things like that was meant to propagandize the public in the way that they felt people should, for our, for whatever, that this would, he was explaining it in a way where the average person would say, oh, the market is brilliant. They wouldn't know what he was sort of talking about. Like, he doesn't talk about the labor embedded in the pencil. Okay, and then he doesn't talk that all the places those things come from are high repression areas where people are being abused and exploited. In the sort of like actual picture, what's happening is the satellite countries, they're sucking capital out to do things by really harming people in a way that means they have no conscience. Okay, wait. So what this is they're saying Chile's free market education, we taught Chile how to have a free market. That's not what took place. The sickest thing I'm aware of the government doing is this. Chile had it was a democratic society. It was a free democratic society, Chile. And what they did is this. They wanted to see what would they've been. See, they'd have the idea is, okay, now what would happen if we put what we're propagandizing everyone with, and what we're sort of like getting ready for by doing a bunch of like demented things, is our theory would be, what if you privatized an entire economy? That is, you privatized every sector of it. Every single thing is under private ownership by foreign corporations. What would happen? And they wanted to use an entire society as kind of a laboratory. So this is how they did it, okay? The CIA can at any time, because they are CIA, can overthrow a government, okay? So, but before it was and put in like a dictator. They can do that, who takes their orders from Washington. But this was the experiment. What they did is they recruited Chilean graduate students, like people who were Chilean but like wanted to go to graduate school, and they offered them like huge grants to come to America and be trained in like the economic theories that are being developed at our best, think tanks, and come to America, okay, like a group of students, like, and then they came here, okay. And what they did is at the Chicago school, like, they educated them in a way that's not a normal education for anyone, but particularly to bring people over from the country they wanted in question. And they educated them with these theories about privatizing a whole economy, about all these like ideas they had that they were like ready to put in place elsewhere and then bring here, but like wanted to use an entire society as a laboratory. Okay, so they educated them with the ideas of this sort of like free market thing and everything's private, okay, and sent them back to Chile. And what they said is like, okay, hang tight in Chile. You've been educated properly with this, okay. Now what they're going to do is the CIA will first, like, you heard of this thing, like, you've heard of like shock and awe, and like, okay. So what they said is, okay, here's what we're going to do. The CIA is going to overthrow a completely democratic government, an actual democratic government. They're going to overthrow the whole thing, and they have someone trained at like the School of the Americas, where they also like sort of train dictators that will take their orders from Washington. We're going to overthrow a democratic government and put in a complete dictatorship under the control of one dictator, okay? Who, like who's, a dictatorship out of a democracy. And then what we're going to do is, the way in which we're going to overthrow their government is we're going to intentionally make it so violent and so frightening, and everything will be blowing up, and do it that way. and it will traumatize the entire population, and the trauma induced by such a thing will facilitate the transfer to a completely free market economy, because while the money's changing value, while public industries are being privatized, they will be so traumatized by the things exploding that they'll be in such a traumatized state that it will facilitate the transition without interference. But how will they make the transition? These Chilean economists that we've trained in the Chicago school will be installed as the economic arm of the dictatorship. So they do this. They terrorized an entire country, installed a dictator, traumatized everyone, and the Chilean economists reorganized the economy, The entire society collapsed, and the people never recovered. They still haven't recovered, from them doing that, and they made it work, but they didn't. A 10-year study said, this is, you can't do that, It's not, but once it worked in their view to do this morally depraved thing, they said, we can do it. We can. And then they started doing it everywhere else, and everywhere they did it, finally, how do you stand up to it? When they did it in Bolivia, the only thing that people could do, because they began privatizing, the water, no one could afford, you had to pay to get water, but no one can afford water. The whole thing, what they reacted by doing, the only way to stop it was the entire country was in a movement where they were burning down their own country. They were actually went to burn the society to the ground if you don't stop, and that's how they stopped them. And all the different corporations like Nestle and all the ones, they simply pulled out because they were burning the country to the ground. Then they brought it here, they brought it everywhere. That's the education of Chile in the free market system. That's what you're watching, and they have to be doing it intentionally, so we can tell you about that.